Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today titled AI Adventure Book Growing Smart, Kind, and Creative with AI. Today, we'll explore how families, educators, and leaders can nurture AI literacy, spark curiosity, and empower young people to use technology responsibly and imaginatively. Today's session will unpack the book's core messages, share practical tools for guiding children and teens, and offer thought provoking insights on how AI can enable character, confidence, and lifelong learning. My name is Franco Malfi. I'm a global sustainability AI ecosystem lead at Capgemini. I've held leadership roles in sustainability, digital transformation, and AI strategy here at Capgemini, at Google Cloud, and as well as at Oracle. And I've always worked at the nexus of global public and private sector environments. I really am focused on applying AI and emerging technologies to advance sustainability outcomes with a strong focus on responsible AI, practical adoption, and helping organizations build trust, transparency, and measurable impact into technology-driven transformation. I am honored to be joined by Ellen Sabin. She is the founder and president of Watering Can Press. She's an educator and author of award-winning books that help children and families build positive habits around complex topics. With a background in public health and medical anthropology, Ellen brings a behavior change lens to AI education, focusing on how early experiences in homes, schools, and communities shape confidence, critical thinking, and long-term relationship with technology. Welcome, Ellen. I'm also honored to have Alexis Bonnell, my good friend and former colleague at Google. She's now the head of AI adoption for public sector with prior leadership roles in AI, innovation, and technology at USAID, Google, the Air Force Research Lab, and the United Nations. Alexis brings deep experience in responsible AI adoption and innovation with a strong focus on practical adoption and how people can build trust and confidence when working with emerging technologies. And now working at OpenAI, she does this and more. So welcome both. So I'm going to start quickly talking about why this topic is so important today. I mean, we are working with customers and organizations on adopting AI for multiple purposes, but we know that AI and Gen AI is particularly as an environment footprint that is greater than traditional AI capabilities. So we are very focused on making sure that we help our customers do that responsibly and also using it for advancing sustainability goals. How can we reduce energy consumption? How can we optimize energy? How can we help in supply chains? How can we help within manufacturing and so on and so forth? But being in the context of business, there's also personal lives. This technology is being used every day by many, many people, both adults and now more and more children are adopting these technologies. So today we want to talk to you about why this topic is so in many parents' minds. A lot of children are growing with it. We need to guide them on how to navigate this rapidly evolving world of AI thoughtfully and responsibly. So with Alexis and Ellen today, they recently collaborated on a book. They have wealth of expertise in AI leadership and behavior-focused educational to create a unique book which they recently published, available for you to buy. It's called the AI Adventure Book, Growing Smart, Kind, and Creative with AI. This is a one-of-a-kind interactive activity book designed to engage children and parents together in becoming more confident, thoughtful, and strategic on how to approach AI. As I mentioned, Alexis brings deep experience in AI strategy and innovation. And Ellen is the founder of Watering Can Press, a mission-driven publisher known for award-winning books that is known for growing kids with character, sparking conversation, and positive behavior change across generation. With that, let's start with Alexis. Alexis, AI is moving quickly into everyday life. What are kids already doing with AI that many parents may not fully realize?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that was really exciting about doing this is being a parent and a grandparent. This is actually a question that, we get all the time and I got all the time. And so being able to work with Ellen and kind of lean in is just been so exciting around this. But to your point, Franco, kids are already using AI in very normal and expected ways. So you could imagine homework support, brainstorming, creative writing, coding help, and just asking questions and being curious. So while a lot of platforms like ChatGPT require parental supervision for kids under 13 and parental permission for 13 to 17, AI is often embedded in other things that maybe we don't think about. So things like streaming platforms, gaming, phones, search platforms. I often find even parents don't often understand how much of what they do already utilizes AI. So whether that is getting potential fraud alerts from the bank, weather reports, GPS, shopping recommendations. And that's why we felt it was important to create something that makes AI visible and discussable to encourage kids, parents, caregivers to talk about how to use AI. And really, what's important to understand is AI is a relationship with knowledge at speed and scale. And it's important for families to be on the same page in the way they seek, consider, and process knowledge.
And I'll add to that. Thanks, Alexis. You know, go going into the weeds a little bit on some of the aspects that Alexis just mentioned. If you take some of those examples, parents, you know, when you ask what don't parents realize, each of those things, homework, are parents really thinking through, gee, my child's doing homework with AI? You know, they're being confronted every day with what should I use? What should I attribute? What shouldn't I attribute? What do I need to check for bias? How do I check for bias? Socially, you know, they're using it every day, or creatively, they're using it every day. So in the weeds, you know, I was confronted by one concrete example. Our designer who designed the book has a young child who was making one of those caricatures of one of her friends and went a little too far, and it turned out mean. So our parents, you know, parents are confronted every day with, wow, how do you have a conversation about, you know, what's thoughtful, what's not thoughtful? So when kids and parents are moving through the conversation, one of the reasons we created this book, the primary reason, as an activity book, was so that parents and children together could have these prompts and these scenarios and these activities. So it could be a discussion together that wasn't intimidating, that was fun, and that was gave them agency to have a dialogue, not necessarily making them a technical expert, but building their confidence and a shared language so that families can talk about using AI in everyday life.
Thank you, Alexis and Ellen. That is phenomenal information, because as I mentioned before, this technology is in our daily lives now and in our children's lives, and we often don't have the tools on how to actually interact with these capabilities and guide and navigate with our children. That is so exciting that you have built these capabilities. And now moving on to you, Ellen, what are you hearing from parents right now when it comes to AI? I mean, obviously, there's probably they're overwhelmed. What feels uncertain or challenging for them? How can we help them?
Well, I'll start with, you know, parents, kind of, if we go up, parents are also human beings who are using AI and confronting AI every day in their own lives. And now let's put that on steroids. Everything that a parent confronts, and I've seen this when, you know, Alexis and I had many conversations as we were creating the book. She just mentioned she's a new grandparent. So parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, anything that makes them either excited or nervous or unsure is on steroids when it comes to a child they love, right? So they're both curious, but they're also unsure. They know AI matters for their children academically and in the future workforce. So they want their children to excel and adopt AI and be and find it useful and use it. They don't want their kids to fall behind. In addition, they want to make sure that their kids don't lose critical thinking skills. So they want to make sure as their child learns to use AI, they learn to use it in a way that empowers them and their critical thinking skills. So AI is the added tool that they use in a thoughtful way. They also want their children to use AI ethically and to understand that AI is helpful when it's a good tool to use and the right tool to use. Finally, parents are nervous about the safety about AI. They read articles and they hear about mental health challenges and other things. So they want to make sure that their child is safe when they're using AI. So there's a lot of things coming at them. And again, I'll mention that's why the book focuses on conversations rather than fear. We really wanted to design it so that families could sit down together and work through specific concrete scenarios, like when do you use AI for homework? How do you think about bias? Not just how do you think about bias, but how do you actually check accuracy? Where do you check for accuracy? How do you use AI creatively rather than passively to be an added element? I'll also mention that we created a free educator teacher guide, which we put on the Watering Can Press website. So teachers could incorporate the book into lesson plans for classroom use. I think many adults, parents and adults, are looking for permission to not have all the answers because, look, it's a changing technology and they don't have all the answers. What they need is a starting point so that they could have, as I mentioned before, shared dialogue, concrete places to go to have permission to talk to their children in ways where they can meet with specific examples and structured conversations, and where there's something with intentionality that we built in for parents, teachers, and other caring adults. We want kids to grow up to be smart, to be kind, and to be intentional with their use of AI.
And I might just add that oftentimes we assume that, a lot of people are using AI, but there's so many that haven't yet used it, kind of don't really understand what it is, are getting perceptions of what AI is, like maybe from the media. And this is really an opportunity, to understand, like to Ellen's point, you don't have to be an expert first. You don't have to know all the answers. AI is actually a learning technology, and we are learning individuals, right? So being willing to just say, let's learn together. So I think one of the key messages in the book that Ellen really emphasizes is that it's absolutely okay to learn alongside your child, right? Like as parents, we feel like we do have to know everything. And this is just one of those things, not only it's an opportunity for us to model curiosity as parents and grandparents, model thoughtful questioning, reflection, and really that curiosity and that thoughtful questioning is much more powerful than having perfect answers. I think the other element about AI is the capabilities are also constantly changing. So it's important that this is not just a one-time conversation. We hope the book kicks off the conversation, but creates some muscle, memory about being able to talk about this subject together and explore these capabilities as they change, and that it's a learning experience for both kids and parents. I think it's important to understand that what wasn't possible in AI a year ago. So to Ellen's point, being able to understand what was the source that AI used for that information. That was not possible a year ago. It's totally possible today. So making sure that, it's not just this one-time conversation, but really that this is a shared learning journey. And Franco, one of the things I want to point out is a lot of times this can feel super intimidating because sometimes AI is like exotic. But the reality is, I like to remind people, you've you, I, Alan, we've all adapted to every technology that came before. I remember when, having a cell phone in my car was a big suitcase, or learning how to text, or, figuring out the internet. And so I think one of the most important messages is that, like, you got this. We can figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, parents, it's really just about the opportunity to have this be a conversation and a way to engage with your kids.
Absolutely. So, I mean, thank you both for that. And I think some of the key things you talked about is how can we help remove some of the fear of all the negative press around it, and how do we get started? A lot of us use it every day, and for us, it's second nature. But for a lot of people, this is new. So how do we actually help the parents would educate their children, but also help the children at heart? Because some of these individuals may not know themselves. So this is both a symbiotic relationship for the parents and the children. It's phenomenal that you're doing this, that you actually built these tools to spark that conversation and spark a way of them to be able to do this in a guided way without it being removing some of the fear and exploring the benefits. There's tremendous benefits of AI. And unfortunately, we're being overshadowed by a lot of the fear that is being created around it. But how do we actually now create that thinking that, hey, how do I adopt this? How do I make myself more advanced? I'm going to learn new skills and use it in my daily lives. I think this is great that you have these tools. So thank you for that. Let's move on to the next question, which I think, I'm loving this conversation. For you, Alexis, why is it important to introduce responsible AI thinking early? That came up with you and Ellen before, rather than waiting until children are older. I think it's a really important question that we need to answer.
Yeah, I think part of it is just habits form early, right? The values that we kind of instill in our kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews, and all of that is really starts from the very beginnings of our interactions. And so again, if we think about AI as a relationship with knowledge, being intentional around what is that relationship, what should that look like? So children learn, they get an opportunity to ask, how does this work? What might be missing? Is this helpful? Is this kind? Those types of habits, that intentionality about thinking kind of through the ecosystem that you're navigating, are really important skills, to drive awareness and intentionality in kids and across our families early. I think, AI literacy is not about memorizing definitions. It's simply about building thoughtful users. And none of us want anything more, right, than having thoughtful kids, right? Kids that are really thinking about the world, their friendships, the different kind of goals and missions they have, but doing that in a thoughtful way. And I think that's why, I'm so excited to partner with Alan, because this book really does focus on critical thinking, ethical reflection, rather than technical instruction. I think about this really as human machine teaming. I think about my grandson, there will never be a time that he's existed on the planet where AI didn't exist, right? And so really this idea of understanding, what is it to human machine team, or in his case, to guide, kind of a machine that gives you this relationship with knowledge. And, I really want my kids, my grandchild, to understand they're in control of ensuring the way that they use AI represents their values and responsibility. And Franco, I might give you one other example that I'm navigating right now. And that is, my youngest daughter is actually a freshman in college. And one of the conversations that we've had is, AI is amazing. And if she chooses to be lazy, AI can make her really, really effectively lazy. But the problem is that choice, the choice to be lazy, also has consequences, right? That aren't just going to manifest in school, but they're going to manifest later in her life, and how she approaches, a life full of opportunities, and how much she really shows up, and kind of takes advantage of those. And so to me, it was important, to work with Alan to get in really early, because those choices that we make about how we show up in the world is almost more important than the AI itself.
And I'll add to that. Thanks, Alexis. I'll add to that. When I started Watering Can Press, I specifically chose to write all of my books for 6 to 12-year-olds, because that's the age where social science and educational science shows that habits learned are the longest to stick and the hardest to break. So yes, it's important to teach things like AI to adults, to college students, to high school students. But if we get kids early on thinking about AI and how to be thoughtful and how to use critical thinking and how to be mindful of their agency and their ethics and their values and their character when using AI, those things will stick as AI changes, as they change, and as they grow with it. So it's the most effective bang for the buck age to go in with an intervention to teach AI. But that's not even the coolest part. The other cool part about why I chose that age range for all my books, and similarly this book, is because in addition, having been, as you introduced me, born and raised in public health, we find that interventions for kids that age are the best that to go through families. So think about it. If I want to get you to stop smoking or wear a seatbelt, great tool. I'm going to teach your 8-year-old about the ills of smoking. Or you're going to have your 7 or 6-year-old in the back seat of your car, and you're going to go and you're going to put your seatbelt on behalf of the child because you want to model behavior that will make your child or grandchild healthy in their lives. So children are very, very, very effective change agents in families. So again, one of the great ways for teaching responsible AI throughout the whole family is to target children who bring lessons home and affect the behavior of the whole family. So a second reason beyond, yes, the habits stick, is that teaching responsible AI thinking early to kids is also a great way to get their parents and other family members learning responsible AI thinking. One of the ideas that Alexis interjected in the book early, which I loved, was this section. Alexis is smiling. I don't know if everybody could see her. She knows what I'm going to say. Was this section which she named "Try It with AI." And at the end of every chapter, it was literally this fun chapter conclusion where it married the end of some of the themes of the book with, hey, kids and parents, try it together. Here's 2 or 3 ideas that are fun, that are engaging. Try it together.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I love this part. I mean, the fact that we're starting younger children from 6 to 12. I mean, if you think of, I have children as well. I remember that age where there was boundless curiosity. The fact that we're bringing these tools into their lives young and we actually help them learn how to use them responsibly will spark a lot of great ideas on how they can use it, and God only knows what they will be able to create by having these capabilities. And we also want to make sure, like you said before, that they do this for the right reasons, that they're not using to be mean, that to hurt others. And if we teach them early on how to do that the right way and have those conversations, because everything needs to have a conversation. I mean, we can't just leave kids to their own devices and go do this on their own. They'll figure it out, not a problem, but they're not going to figure out necessarily the right way. We want to frame it in order for them to use it the right way. And I love the idea of doing this very early on and having those lessons and having parents learning along with the kids. Phenomenal. Let's move on to you, Ellen. Another question that always comes to mind was you've worked in digital literacy for many, many years before, including cybersecurity education. What lesson did you draw from that you're applying to AI today? I mean, there's a lot of similarities, of course.
Yeah. Before writing this book with Alexis, I had written a book called The Super Smart Cyber Guide for Kids. And, it really informed this one, Alexis and I teaming up to write this book. So in cybersecurity, we learned that when families built shared language around digital tools, confidence increased dramatically.
Yep.
And over the past 5 years since that book has been out, and obviously like AI, digital literacy, cybersecurity has changed. So it's been edited a couple times, but over the past 5 years, more than 50 plus CISOs and cybersecurity education teams use that book in their companies to spark family conversations that reinforce good digital habits. So from that experience, there were a couple things we learned. What made that approach so effective was that companies were able to engage employees in learning through something that mattered deeply to them, namely the children they love. And that hook that made cybersecurity feel more personal, more relevant, and more motivating. It brought the lessons not just as another, cybersecurity education program, but it brought it home to them. Employees paid more attention, and it often strengthened while they were thinking about habits for their kids. It often strengthened, as I made the point in the earlier answer, their own digital habits. So it was a real win-win. It served families, but it also served organizations' influence because it changed employee practices. So many companies used the book in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, in employee engagement, Take Your Child to Work Day, client gifts, even in sharing the book with community partners or schools. And we're seeing the same move. So those were some of the things that informed the AI book. We're seeing a similar moment now with AI, where conversations and reflection strengthen responsible use, where multi-generational approach has proven a powerful tool, where we can see that organizations seeking to reinforce the lesson could also do so in a thoughtful way with technology by using an organization to bring it home. It also helps build interest and confidence in the next generation, which matters seriously as we think about the workforce for the next generation. This approach really affected how we did the AI Adventure book. We designed it really as a practical tool and a conversation starter that could support families directly, while also thinking that it could be something that could be used in companies for employees, in classrooms for students, and broadly in organizations with initiatives with programs where you would want to help children and adults navigate an AI confidence building conversation. So that's what we hope to achieve.
Awesome.
I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's really, to Ellen's point, what kicked off our original conversation was this great book that she wrote. And I, at the time, happened to be or had just come off of being an authorizing official, which, as you know, Franco, carries a lot of weight in making sure that you're making the right cybersecurity decisions at an organizational level. And what I was really struck by, both in cybersecurity as well as AI, and I thought it was so wise of Ellen to kind of lean in, is that cybersecurity is a great example of a topic that is typically pushed through education, through the kind of employers, right?
Yes.
And yet it's a topic where, Alexis as a individual person out in the world has just as many cybersecurity concerns, if not maybe more, than, Alexis within an organization, because my organization actually puts a tremendous amount of protection there on my behalf. And so I thought it was so smart to really lean in and say, yes, this is something that kids should know, but it's also something that I think sometimes we compartmentalize the idea of like existing in our personal lives and professional. And I think that wisdom, coming into the AI book is, was so obvious, because in AI, in my case, I have a ChatGPT personal account and I have a work account, right? And so this is a technology that exists in like both halves of Alexis's personal and professional universe. And I think, being able to understand that it will be that way, for most folks on the planet who are going to be engaging some type of this technology or that relationship with knowledge. And so again, I think it's just really important to be intentional about, what are the values we're bringing to that? What is the awareness? I think another book that Ellen didn't mention, but I was really impressed by, and I think there's a similar theme, is finance, right? We absolutely see that families that talk about money and money management and financial issues with their kids tend to go on and make better financial decisions. And so I think all of that stacks to say, like, why AI, why now? Because it is here, it's going to impact our lives, but we can be intentional both on the personal side as much as we are on the professional side.
Absolutely. I mean, I love this discussion about cybersecurity and AI and really making it second nature to children. I mean, because if you think of it, if you grow up with it and you are more intentional, you learn all these discussions and you learn these capabilities early in your life. This is going to be something that will be with you forever. And you're always going to have this in the back of your mind it's going to be second nature for you to think about how to be more safe online, how to actually ensure that you're not going to be hacked. And because if you think of it, these things are becoming more and more sophisticated. And if you form those habits early as an individual, when you go to the workforce, you're going to be able to bring them with you. So I think there's a symbiotic relationship. What do the habits we form in our personal lives help us in our professional lives as well? So this is awesome that you're doing using those lessons and you're bringing them to AI as well. Thank you both for that. Let's move on to the next question. A lot of great tips so far, great discussion, but as a parent, I may be overwhelmed. What would be one practical step that parents can take this week to begin having more thoughtful AI conversations at home? Where do we start? Well, let's start with you, Alexis.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that's just really an interesting observation that I would make as someone who kind of specializes in human machine teaming and in AI adoption, what has become really overwhelmingly clear for me is that when people learn AI, kind of like with a mentality to curiosity and fun and kind of more low stakes, they actually become better at it much more quickly. Sometimes, when we think about it more in a professional capacity, it can feel a little bit more weighty. And so, my advice is start with curiosity. Ask your child, like, what they already understand about AI. The question or the answer may be nothing, right? You may be introducing this as something that they're really not familiar with yet. Are they using it? And then have them show you how, whether it's homework help or brainstorming or something creative. If they are using it, they may show you something cool about AI. I will say that as cool as I think I am, my kids are still the ones who teach me a lot of things, even about, my own tools that I get to work with. And I think really the goal of the book is to use it to kind of walk through these like clear activities, conversations, to be intentional about AI. And to Ellen's point, try some of the prompts together, right? And, being able to ask them, why did you use that prompt, or what made you use those words? Let's try different contexts, right? Or different ways of doing things. That experimentation and iteration is really interesting because you actually do get different answers. I think another, important step is just model thoughtful use for yourself. So if you use AI, say out loud to yourself, kind of what am I using it for? How am I taking this output? Am I looking for sources? Kids really learn a lot about responsible behavior by watching it. And you would be amazed by sometimes, just as a parent, when you're sitting with your child talking through, I'm going to do this and I'm going to ask it this. And here's, and I said it this way. Do you know why I did? Is just a really interesting way, kind of like an opportunity for your kid to have a little bit of how does my mom or dad or auntie think, right? Oh, that's how adults think. Another example that I just did, and looking forward to do every year, we have cousins that come and visit. And, I had done with one of them, hey, the other cousins are going to come visit this weekend, and we wanted to make a custom bedtime story for all the kids to enjoy, and I asked AI, can you help write a positive story that says something nice about each person that we can surprise our family with? And I said, ask us questions to help us write the story to ensure the story is safe, fun, and enjoyable to listen to. And in that instance, the reason I highlight that, Franco, is because a lot of people think they have to know exactly what they're going to put in, but you can actually ask, something like ChatGPT, like, how should I do this? Or I want to do this thing. Ask me questions to help me do that. And so that back and forth ability to kind of collaborate, I think, is much different for people. A lot of times they think about tech, they think about social media and like consuming. And really AI is fundamentally different. It's a lot about creation, production. And so that opportunity to have a back and forth and to model that is just really, really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have an answer, but there's something that Alexis said that I wanted to expand on because it reminded me of it. Alexis just mentioned the value of having children hear what you're doing and what you're thinking as you do it. Another thing that I learned from doing the cyberbook, which is true as well in the AI topic, is having children hear parents say when they've made a mistake. Really, really valuable. So you're using AI. You're in the living room, you're doing it, you make a mistake. You say, wow, I just did this research on AI, but I don't think that answer is 100% accurate. Let me double check it. Here's why I'm double checking it, and here's how I'm double checking it. Saying that out loud models really good behavior for a child. So talking through not just what you're doing that's positive, like you're the smartest thing in the world and you make no mistakes and you can't admit any errors, but talking about things that you're flubbing up on also gives kids permission to talk about, I'm not sure about this, I'm unclear, I might make a mistake. So I did want to point that out because that's also really valuable as we're trying to get, both in the book and in general education, we're really trying to get kids to have the conversation. So having the conversation means giving permission to learn together. So I wanted to say that before I gave my answer to your question, which was, I had an answer, but I thought it would be more fun to pick up the book and give you one or two examples. Your question was, what are some real examples? So fun ones, like as we were trying to, give some concrete examples in the book, what's one or two things parents can do today to start the conversation? We had a really concrete example: respect or not. Respect means using AI as a helper, not a shortcut. And there's a game. You could just come up with your own game. Look at each of the items below, and is this a respectful use of AI or not a respectful use of AI? Come up with a list while you're in the car on a carpool and say, is this respectful? Is this ethical, or is it not? It's a great way to have an ethical conversation in a car ride about respectful or not respectful use of AI. There's another activity. I'll give another example. There's a page that says AI doesn't always get it right. So learn to be a good AI detective. And we give examples about when it's smart to check AI, but also how to check AI. So there's an example in the book. I'm looking down at it. We define a fact as something you can check and prove, and an opinion is this. So you're taking a walk after dinner. Okay, dear child of mine, here's 3 facts. Here's 5 things. Do you think that's a fact or an opinion? Would you double check that if it came back or not double check that? So there's a lot of ways to have these conversations that promote thinking, that when your child does go back and use AI, you're stimulating them to be critical thinkers. You're stimulating them to be thoughtful and ethical and mindful and kind. You're stimulating them to converse with you when they're confused. And you're also stimulating them to have fun and be creative and jump and explore this awesome new technology. So
Absolutely.
And Franco, if I can add one thing, I was struck by the fact that a lot of times people think and assume that different types of backgrounds or different types of minds that have always maybe been more advantaged in technology. So you can imagine kind of STEM graduates, right, or coders or engineers are going to be better at AI because that's really, who has excelled in technology previously. And I want to let you in on a little secret in my research. Franco, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I want you to guess, who do you actually think is a type of group of people that is surprisingly the best that I've found at using AI?
I would imagine children, because they would ask questions that we can't think of, right?
So children are, of course, phenomenal, but actually, Franco, it's moms. And the reason why moms are so great at AI is exactly to Ellen's point, this idea of iteration, right? So if AI is a learning tool and kind of you're learning, and it's really like a knowledge-driven relationship, what moms are really good at, first and foremost, is things like, I don't know if I've gotten the whole story, right? Or, let me ask that question in another way. We're already used to kind of contextually navigating. But most importantly, moms really have, kind of a benevolent iteration, meaning that if they go in and ask AI for something, and as Ellen says, it doesn't necessarily give them exactly what they want, instead of the reaction being like, oh, AI is dumb, it's stupid, I knew I should never use it. Moms tend to be like, well, actually, like what I wanted was this, or could you, gives a little bit more context. And because of that iteration and because of that curiosity, what happens is that they become really like more advanced kind of prompters or queryers quickly. And more importantly, the AI, which is also trying to adapt, to their needs, is also able to kind of get right-sized, right, to the relationship with knowledge they want. And so I say that because I think it's important that somehow the message out there is that AI is like really hard and complex, and you've got to this degree or that degree or this certification. And actually, that's the best thing about this technology is it's fundamentally not true at all, right? It's really the people who are curious, who are willing to iterate, who are willing to do that back and forth. And that's why it's so rich an environment to be doing that, kind of with your children and driving conversation. And the last thing I would say to Ellen's point is a lot of times people think about AI and they'll think about it and like sitting in front of a computer, like I am AIing right now. And most of my friends and colleagues that do use it, we actually use it in the car, right, with kids. We say, oh, let's, we're driving through this state, let's come up, AI, come up with a quiz about 20 questions that, you can ask the family in the car as we're driving through. So I think as people become comfortable with it, it's exciting to see how it really crosses over from just your computer or your device, because it is a relationship with knowledge, right? And knowledge is everywhere. So that ability to exist in that knowledge space in almost any environment is one of the really exciting things about AI.
Oh, I'm really loving this conversation, and thank you, Alexis, for giving me that insight, because it is true. Mom knows best, right? And having conversation with your children really gives you an insight into how they view the world, get to know them better, and the fact that you're having conversations about AI and how to use it more responsibly and how to learn from it, and you're giving them different perspectives, you're getting their perspectives, and if you're having conversations as a family about it, you're now like you're actually creating the space where they have permission to experiment, and it's okay to not get the right answer. And also, you do need to check to make sure it is the right answer. I think creating the mindset, creating that way of thinking is really important, because if you take everything at face value and everything ChatGPT is right all the time, of course it is, but there's always, you have to kind of check your answers. So therefore, creating that world where the kids are thinking about it and starting that at home, starting that early, and making it part of your nexus is really, really important. I'm loving this. Let's move on to the next question, where this is so much fun. Next question is like, for you, Ellen, why does this conversation matter beyond just the families, right? I mean, we are exposed to many individuals. Why does it matter beyond the individual family?
Well, children are living and using AI everywhere, in schools, in life. They're going to be using it in organizations. Let's also say, if I again go back to what I learned from doing the cyber book, it's important for the United States, for our culture, for our communities to have people who are adept at new technology for security reasons, for technology reasons, for business reasons. This is a changing world, and we need the next generation of experts in both cyber and AI. So there's a lot of reasons why this is a really, really important topic. And children, AI is not going away. It's going to grow. It's going to permeate all aspects of of children's lives, as they, we can't even fathom probably how it's going to permeate children's lives when they get older. So yes, it goes far beyond family life. We've been talking about family life. So it goes far beyond that. Some of the grounding, however, frankly, that went into our thinking on the book. And yes, it's a 64-page activity book for kids and families and organizations, so I won't make it bigger than it is. But some of the grounding for that does go into ethics, agency, intentionality, empowerment, not having fear. So all of those things do matter. The other thing I'll say is, can other groups use tools like this, beyond families? I mentioned it earlier, and indeed, yes, not only could, but should. Nonprofits, there are, we'll talk about, digital equity. While Alexis mentioned, and it's true, this is everywhere. There are places where bringing in education and AI education to communities that have less access to it through nonprofits is important. Building that digital equity. So sharing important information about AI literacy with nonprofits, by foundations, by corporations, is important. Companies helping to build familiarity with AI, as I said, might follow suit with what happened in the cybersecurity book by sharing information with adults that then permeates into households. Effective tool.
Yeah.
So it's important.
I mean, I think if I could add a couple of really exciting things that I've seen is that, because AI is maybe seen as a more of a forefront technology, what I love about it is it doesn't actually take much to get under your belt to where you can be helpful to others, right? And so,
Yes.
an example of that is, I love going out in the community, and I just, volunteer, or my kids or others volunteer, to go to like retirement homes, right? And show folks, how to use it there, or, go to like their church, and kind of we literally helped a woman, kind of solve a whole bunch of like donation backlog thank yous, right, by introducing her to AI. And so I think that, as we find these tools, it's not just a question of how responsible use. It's like, now that we have an understanding of some of these things, your child, maybe your family are in a position to actually help others, right? And you don't have to be an expert. You can go in and just talk about the basics. One of the things that I found really interesting, maybe two observations. One, we recently put out an updated version of something called Codex, which is in essence our coding assistant. So if anyone listening has heard of vibe coding, all that means is that you're in essence able to kind of code or create apps or things like that just with words. You don't have to know Python or Java or any of those types of things. And that means that I have, friends and nieces and nephews that are 8 doing their first like vibe coding apps, right? Making their own little version of Frogger. We're starting to see people have like what they would call custom GPTs in their resume, right? So there really is a very fast follow as our kids grow up, not only about how this will start to become reflective, of their knowledge and the potential in the world they have because of their knowledge of AI, but it's also something where, I would really say if you get through this book and it's only, it's fun, you will actually be in a great spot with your family, with your kids to go teach others, right? To show, others how to use this. And I think as we take on, this mantle of knowledge and understanding, it really is a great opportunity to kind of pay it forward as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is awesome. I mean, a lot of great points in the conversation. AI is everywhere. It's not just at home. We have it in our lives, different parts, and helping others and teaching others how to use it. What better way than having children put their whatever they're learning to good use? I mean, it's a great way to pay it forward as well. Awesome. This is great. So next question for you, Alexis. If you could give one mindset shift for parents about AI, what would it be? Like, I mean, if you think of it, we're not wired to talk about this stuff with our kids. We didn't grow up with this. How would you help them?
I think the mindset shift would simply be like, try it. Like, you got this. Like, just pull it up. It's free, right? Like, you don't have to pay anything. You can get access to these tools without any financial barrier. Just try it. Just play a little bit. And it does not have to be heavy. So I'll give you an example of one of my favorite things I've been doing lately. I often find myself at the end of the day really hungry and just not a lot of energy left to put together, like, what are we going to have and all of, the meal stuff. So I literally take a picture of my fridge and in a pretty probably tired voice, I'm like, what can I make that's in the fridge that will take 10 minutes that, tastes good and gives me at least some protein. And, Franco, just that little moment of relief, of like, oh, you can, make an omelet. You've got these things. It's like, oh, it's one decision I didn't have to make. And it might seem silly, but even those types of, things are really helpful to increase confidence. And just for folks to understand, like, you're totally capable of this now. It's not scary. And it's especially not scary when you actually get to use it. When I teach AI, one of the things, these are very technical terms, but one of the things I introduce to people is that there's kind of 4 stages on the journey of having a relationship with technology, of human machine teaming. And just wait for it. The first one's ta-da, then uh-oh, then aha, and then meh. Really? And the point is the ta-da is like, you just have to start trying it, right? Then the uh-oh is you can ask more intentional, thoughtful questions. And we put a lot of those in the book. And then the third is the aha is like, oh, you find that thing where all of a sudden you got to write a great bedtime story, or you got a little help with the evening meal. And then, the meh or the blah is just like, it becomes normal, much like Google searching and other. It's a relationship with knowledge. It's a kind of tool to be helpful in your life. And it's really up to you how you use it. So long story short, Franco, my best advice is just start.
Yeah, great advice. And Ellen, you want to chime in?
All right, I'll dumb it down a little bit here. A social scientist, health person instead. What I would say is I would emphasize, look, there's a wave. and your children, children in society are riding that wave. So if you don't have the conversation's going to go on without you.
Yes.
Media, peers, classrooms are going to have that conversation, and you're not going to be a part of it. So my big answer to that conversation is you have a responsibility to join it. You wouldn't put your child on a bicycle without a helmet. Have a conversation about, here's a new technology, a new tool, and here's some safety rails. It's your responsibility to be the safety rails. So my big answer to that would be part of the conversation. That's my big answer. The second part of the big answer is, like almost anything adults teach kids, we can do it from a preachy, rule setting, oh, shut up, mom, kind of like, I'm not listening kind of way. Like, who wants to be preached to? I'm an adult and I still don't want to have somebody lecture to me. Or you can do it in let's join hands and learn this together and make mistakes together and have fun together, and an open dialogue where you're inspired and you're learning together. I think we mentioned that in the book, as an example, we have a family pledge, a place where actually kids and parents write down together, this is what we all agree on together, because these are the habits and traits we all think make sense for us to responsibly use this. So my big answer to that is A, lead and join the conversation, because it's going to go on without you. If not, you have no idea where it will take your child. And B, have it as a dialogue so that your children come to you with their questions, their problems, and not someone else.
Awesome advice. Thank you both for that. We're going to have one last question since we're coming to the end of the session. Really, individual households, families talking together, your friends and so on, but also our professional lives. What roles can organizations like companies where we work, nonprofits, schools where we send our children? You talked about having a guide for schools. How can we play a role in supporting families as we navigate AI? Because it is a new topic. It can be overwhelming. We need tools. Like, how can these organizations help? And Ellen, maybe if you can start, then Alexis as well.
I think I covered some of that, so I don't really want to be too redundant, but I guess without being redundant, I'll say at a high level. Number one, schools. They're challenged by this as well. They're facing, how do we deal with this? How do we put guardrails on, et cetera? We did create the book as something that schools could give in classrooms to not only be used in the classroom, but also be used and taken home by every student as a keepsake. But we also, as I mentioned, created a free teacher's guide with lesson plans that meet national and state content standards, which is really cool. So number one, schools could integrate things like the book, our book, or others into classroom use so that it doesn't just teach AI literacy, but teaches at the same time character education. That's one great way. Second, corporations. Corporations, as I mentioned earlier, when you asked me about the cybersecurity example, corporations can incorporate tools like this in numerous ways, and I gave some examples. I certainly think there's precedent to using books like the AI book in HR, in onboarding, in AI education, in ERG, family ERGs, in family days, etc. There's also precedent to using the AI book in corporate social responsibility and foundation work. Corporations that share AI education tools with local nonprofits to spread AI education not only serves local nonprofits, but let's call a spade a spade. These organizations need AI experts of the future, STEM experts of the future. So they're not only serving nonprofits and underserved populations, but they're also serving themselves and their future workforce.
Yes.
Those are some examples.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen.
I would add just a few to them. I think one is, this book is so helpful, I think, to just have that conversation, to start from somewhere. I also think, a lot of people do have AI training available in their workplace. And if they do, take advantage of that, right? Sometimes it's optional, and really understanding and taking advantage and leaning in. I think there are, resources, that I'm familiar with, like OpenAI Academy, where you can go again and kind of as a parent, like maybe upskill yourself a little bit more in case you want to feel slightly ahead, of your child. But starting together in the book is amazing. It's also something where, we're coming up more to the summer season. Like, I would love to see this book in places like summer camps, right? Or other types of places. It doesn't just have to be a parent, right? It's really any interaction with, we all know it takes a village. So really any interaction where kids have an opportunity to learn, to have a relationship with knowledge, as Ellen mentioned, kind of the teacher's guide. This is really geared to help, kind of help adults and kids coexist in a really positive way. And I will tell you the one idea that my niece came up with, Franco, that I think she's going to be a pretty shrewd businesswoman. We were going over, different AI. And so instead of a lemonade stand this summer, she is going to have an AI stand. And she is going to charge people $1 for, kind of like a helpful prompt. And they can give her, subjects, whether that's like, training my pet or, gardening or anything like that. And she's already been working with her mom on, having these prompts ready to go. So for those of you that want to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, want to encourage your kids, and also want to be sharing and informing others and making this less scary, there are just a world of opportunities to do that.
I'll also add, if I could, just some concrete examples. If it's okay.
Yes.
One of the early buyers of the book, if it's okay to say, Alexis, one of the early buyers of the book was OpenAI. They took several thousand copies. They are using the book for onboarding new employees. Who would have thought? OpenAI is using a children's book for onboarding employees. Another corporation is having us brand the book and giving it out at a very high level leadership conference on security, showcasing their thought leadership in the security arena. And a third has taken many thousands of copies and will be sharing it with schools to help support schools and school systems. So there are several concrete examples that are starting. I mean, the book just came out, but there are several concrete examples. Another last one I'll say is Alexis had heard that a local Girl Scout troop that is near where she lives is hoping to get donated supplies. So once that happens, Alexis has put her hand in the air and said, I want to volunteer and do reading events for the Girl Scouts in that area once there's a donation, and volunteer to do reading events for that. Think about it. This professional from OpenAI is going to be chatting with Girl Scouts at a local troop with the book. It's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you both. Thank you, Ellen, and for all these great insights, and Alexis as well. We are leaving more inspired than ever. I mean, one thing that I loved, Alexis, you talked about is this technology, AI, is really to augment humanity. How do we help humans be greater versions of themselves? How do we create new opportunities for them? Unfortunately, it's not always framed that way in the news. Let's kind of forget what's happening in the news. Let's think about unleashing the possibilities for our children. What better? But we need to have those conversations with our children. We need to get them started young, and we also need to learn from each other, from our children and others, and having tools like your book that you both wrote, which thank you so much for sharing with us. It really is a great tool to help us kind of frame the conversation. Like you said, if we're not having the conversation, they will learn it somewhere else, and they may not learn it the right way. We want to make sure they use the technology responsibly, that they use it for the right reasons, and they use it to unleash their potential. So I think we encourage everyone to read the book, and we'll share a link on where you can buy the book. But we hope that you found today's session informative. Time has flown. We already passed more than an hour, and I thank you both for staying this long, and all of you for listening to us. And I really enjoyed being here today. And let's keep the conversation going. It's just the beginning. AI is here to stay. Let's just enjoy it and have fun with it.
Thanks
Last words, Ellen and Alexis.
Just appreciate the time and hope people get out there and really, to your point, achieve the potential that this relationship with knowledge gives them. It's pretty unprecedented.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ellen?
Thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Franco and Alexis.
Thank you, everyone.